join in. We're also live on YouTube, so that is something interesting and cool. I see Michele is experimenting with the backgrounds. Fantastic. So we can maybe start on time because we have an hour, and I see also Martin has joined us. Let's see if he can join us. And here we are. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this interesting, we're sure it's going to be an interesting discussion today. My name is Alessandro. I'm the managing director of EU40, which is the network of young members of the European Parliament. And today at EU40, we are interested in discussing new breeding techniques, the challenges and opportunities that this very interesting topic will bring today. I am very, very pleased and happy to have with us a fantastic array of panelists that go from policymakers to scientists to industry representatives. It's going to be a very, very interesting discussion. And without further ado, I will present you now the speakers, and then we're gonna start a conversation around this new topic, which is very interesting. It goes from sustainability to innovation to food and food safety. So we're gonna dive deep into that. The conversation today is also live streamed on YouTube. All the participants on Zoom can ask questions on the Q&A box, so please feel free to do it. Feel free to tweet about it. And without further ado, I would like to present you Paolo De Castro, member of the European Parliament, Bruce Danin, Minister Counselor for Agricultural Affairs of the US Mission and the USDA, Michele Morgante, who's the Director of Applied Genomic Institute, and he's also a professor at Udine University, not very far from where I come from, which is very interesting and always nice. Nikita Sajiv, co-founder and board member of the Gene Sprout Initiative. Soon enough, Nikita is going to tell us all about this. And Garlic von Essen, Secretary General at Euroseeds. I'm really curious, Garlic, to understand from you what is going to be the way forward. So now, thank you very much for being here. Paolo, I would like to understand from you, let's dive straight away into the discussion. As a member of the European Parliament, I would like to ask you, why is it important today to talk about new breeding techniques? Why is it important to talk about food safety, and what is the way forward? Thank you, Paolo.
Thanks a lot, everybody. And first of all, let me thank Alessandro and the European Union 40 for the invitation. And good afternoon to all of the participants. It is really a pleasure for me to be here today to discuss such an important topic like the new sustainable biotechnologies. These new techniques have a crucial role to contribute to the objective of the Green Deal, and in particular on the farm to fork and biodiversity strategy, as well as of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for a more resilient and sustainable agri-food system. Currently, the European Parliament is working on the 2 resolutions on both strategy, and one on biodiversity has just been approved by the plenary with many positive points concerning the research, but also some negative aspects, in particular on gene drive. This is a clear example of the work we still need to do in order to better spread the knowledge among legislators regarding the potential and the benefit of these techniques. In this sense, I would like to highlight now how the study published by the European Commission on the new Genomic Techniques last month represents a fundamental step forward, as it clarifies very in good way the difference between the new sustainable breeding techniques and the traditional old-style GMO, and the necessity of update the European Union legal framework. Indeed, this clarification could very much enhance the toolbox available for our farmers in the transition toward always more sustainable production system, If we really want to achieve the new ambitious sustainability objective without compromise the European production capability, we need to provide to our farmers sustainability alternative to plant protection product, fertilizer, and other chemical inputs. This alternative will have to take into consideration innovation in all forms, from precision farming to the new sustainable breeding techniques. But I don't want to take too much time. I just give back the floor to Alessandro, but this is a very crucial point for the future in agriculture in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo, very much. I think you tackle straight away one of the points that we're going to discuss later on also with Michele. You know, I ask all the speakers, all the panelists, all the experts to have a short introduction, and then we really dive in. So I will come back to you straight away with a question. But first, Nikita, I would like to bring you in. So if you can give us, in a nutshell, what is Gene Sprout and the initiative and why you created it. Earlier on, we were talking about it, so it would be interesting to understand that. And also, if you could give us a snippet on what are NBTs concretely as a young scientist.
Thanks, Alessandro. Again, I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. It's a great platform for Gene Sprout Initiative to be here as well. So Gene Sprout Initiative is a young researcher-led platform. It promotes, or it aims to promote, open dialogue about new plant breeding techniques with all stakeholders, but particularly the scientists and the public, to bridge that knowledge gap. We started when the ECJ ruling kind of made the implementation of these techniques very challenging in the market. And this was very disheartening for young researchers and scientists, because we spent all our education and research hoping that our research will be used for the betterment of society. And then something like this makes us feel quite demotivated, because we are scientists because we love science, but we also want to see a betterment of society. We want to do something for the society as well. So that's why Gene Sprout Initiative came into place, where we work towards informing the public, listening to the public, showing what we do in research, and also raising our voice on this issue and how important it is for us, for our careers, and also for the next generation of people. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Nikita, for the brief introduction. We come back later on understanding concretely exactly how you told me you're in your lab in the Netherlands. So I'm really curious to understand how the concrete part of it works. Bruce Danin, hi Bruce, thank you for being with us. You know, I think interestingly enough, and we are going to discuss also with Paolo and with Garlic later, you know, we are talking about innovation and research, and clearly that is a huge component of the spirit of the United States. So I would like to ask you, you know, what is the status of the play today when it comes to new breeding techniques?
Well, Alessandro, thank you very much. It's a great question. And right now, the U.S. is moving forward with new breeding techniques, and because we don't have much of a choice with climate change and with the pressure on the land, we have to be better stewards of the land. And so the first thing is, our food and agricultural systems are under pressure and will continue to be. We're facing unprecedented challenges today, such as the task to grow enough food, feed, fiber, and fuel to meet the demands of a global population expected to reach 8.6 billion in less than 10 years. And agricultural biotechnology, in conjunction with a broad range of other tools, helps us to achieve sustainability goals and a secure future. The other thing we always have to keep in the front of our head is that farmers know what works best for them and their farms. Empowering our agricultural experts, farmers, and ranchers to choose effective tools, okay, like gene editing, but not just gene editing, allows them to earn a living while consistently providing nutritious, fresh food and simultaneously mitigating environmental problems. This is important because farmers want to make a decent livelihood, but that's not their only motivation. They're risk averse. They want to make sure that what they use isn't going to hurt their farm or their land. They're very concerned about passing on their land to the next generation. Okay? And they're interested in providing what consumers want. And I guess that's my third point. Consumers deserve access to a variety of high quality foods that they trust, which also meet their nutritional, health, and lifestyle needs. Newer methods like genome editing can be used to develop enhanced crops like those developed through conventional breeding techniques, but at a faster rate, allowing these products to quickly reach the consumer while also maintaining safety standards. So new breeding techniques meet the requirements of sustainability in terms of environment, okay, in terms of market, if you will, demand, okay, in terms of economics and biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. You stayed within the 3 minutes perfectly, so thanks a lot. Before going to Michele, I just wanted to touch base with Garlic. You know, Garlic, you represent Euroseeds, which is the European Association of Seeds. So this topic obviously touches upon your work on an everyday basis. You know, I would like to understand what is the take on NBTs from the producer side, from your organization perspective. Could you give us a snippet? Garlic, just a quick question. You're muted, so just unmute yourself, please.
I thought I had done it, but my touch was not light enough, apparently. So thanks, Alessandro, for the question and also for the invitation and the possibility to discuss this subject with so many experts and so many people online. Why do we care? Because it is important. These technologies are the next generation of tools that will be used in plant breeding. Not only in plant breeding, but probably it's fair to say that plant breeding is very much advanced as regards the development of concrete products with the help of these new tools. So it's a bit like asking a mobile phone manufacturer why they would care about the next generation of 6 or 7G technology if there is already 3 and 4. Why do we go for the next generation of tools and technologies? Because generally they allow us to do better, to do faster, in this case, to do things more precise. So to really cut the waste also. Most of you may know that developing new plant varieties is a pretty time-consuming effort. It usually takes us around 10 years to actually, from devising a research project to the final variety getting to market. And with the challenges that we have ahead of us and the pressures coming from, Bruce mentioned, world population growth within 10 years. In the EU, biodiversity farm to fork strategy, reduction of other inputs within 10 years. So pressures coming from multiple angles. And the only way to actually do justice to all of them, at least to a good extent, and I'm not saying we are capable of delivering all, we come back to that probably in the later discussion, will require us to use all available tools, in particular those that allow us to speed up. And that's why we care. And that's why we think these technologies deserve a deep discussion and also really merit a new legislative approach of the European Union.
Thank you, Garlic, for this snippet. And now, Michele, I will allow you 3 minutes and 30 seconds because you will have a tougher job. I'm not an expert. So what I would like to ask you is to kindly explain to me, and this is something that Paolo mentioned earlier, like, what is the difference between NBTs and GMOs? Like, what are we talking about today?
So the main difference is that NBTs lead to modifications, genetic modifications, that are of the same type that could be obtained by traditional crossing and selection procedures, or that could be obtained by spontaneous mutation or by induced mutations. And all these sources of variation have already been widely exploited in plant breeding. So when it comes to regulations, we can accept the fact that when we perform a modification, which has previously never been done, by, for example, bringing a bacterial gene into a plant, and so we bring into the food chain a protein product that has never been touched upon by the consumers, we do accept that there should be additional checks to make sure that there is no danger for environment, there is no danger for consumers, and so on and so forth. It becomes more difficult for us, as well as for the seed companies, as well as for the plant breeders, to understand why, if the type of modifications that we produce with these technologies is identical to those that have already been used in plant breeding, why should we perform all these additional checks? The bottom line is that Europe, unlike the US and other countries, has chosen a set of regulations which are process-oriented rather than product-oriented. So we make a difference not based on what the modification leads to, but rather we make a difference based on how we perform the same modification. So we could have two varieties that have exactly the same genetic makeup, but we will treat them very differently because one was obtained, for example, by genome editing, by performing a precise point mutation, and the other one was obtained by crossing. Identical genetically, but they get treated very differently. It's very logical if you consider it rationally, and we hope that the discussion can proceed based on logical and not ideological considerations.
And thank you, Michele. So on this one, I would like to go to Paolo specifically, because I see you want to answer to this, but also I would like to add an additional component to this. Paolo, what is when we talk about food in Europe? It's crystal clear. You know, we are talking about something that is part of our culture. So obviously, people look at it not only because it sustains ourselves, but also because it's part of our culture. So how much, to complement on what Michele said, how much do we need to, you know, raise awareness on the topic? Like, how can we move forward?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me underline what Michele said, because it's very clear. Because it's quite completely different, this technology with the whole GMO, we don't have to talk about the new GMO. That will kill us. We are talking something totally new. We are talking something that have nothing to do with what the people know as a Frankenstein food. You know, the idea of Frankenstein food was to mix gene coming from different species. Now we are working inside of the same species. So this is very important from the political point of view. Maybe from the scientific point of view is less important, but from the political point of view, it's very important because we have a very large support on that, and we have to maintain and to clarify day by day this difference. And for this reason, it's very important the communication by the DGI, by the Commission, because it clarifies mutagenesis and transgenesis. Then, of course, when we talk about food, Alessandro, we are very much, you know, pushing by a lot of stakeholders, culture aspect, etc. So we have to pay attention when we talk about that. And because today the pressure, we are working now on the CAP reform, you have to see how many mails, how many social every day we receive from all parts of the different stakeholders. So we are very, very in the narrow street, but without innovation, without new technologies, we don't have a chance. Because what Garlic said, we need to produce more with less. We need to keep natural resources. We need to create a condition for the future generation. And without innovation, it's impossible.
No, that's great. Nikita, before getting to you, just a quick follow-up, Paolo, on something that Bruce mentioned earlier. And he said, you know, farmers know best what works for them. On the other side, just a quick question that came to my mind on this, and then I would like also to understand it from Garlic. If farmers know best what works for them, it is also true that they need to work within a framework that politics set. So how can we, you know, work within this framework by listening to farmers? Maybe how do we do it?
You were asking that to me?
Go for it, Garlic.
I was not sure whether it was to me or not.
Go for it, Garlic.
No, but I think farmers make choices on the base of information as regards what variety to choose, when to plant it, how to protect it, etc. Specifically in Europe, we have a very elaborate system according to which new varieties are examined, are tested in the field over years, and then authorized, and I would like to underline that, so they are indeed regulated, they are authorized then for marketing with that information about their potential in agricultural production. So farmers know exactly what to use. And they also understand that seed is a key input. It's one of the few inputs that you actually cannot replace by something else. You can replace crop protection to some extent from chemical to mechanical and so forth, but you can't replace seed. You got to have good seed, otherwise the base for your further production is ruined. So indeed, as Bruce mentioned, farmers are very cautious of that, and they're not going to risk production if they're not convinced. But what we can see is that there are many, many farmers out there, and if you look at the positions of Copa Cogeca and others, it's blatantly clear, that place great hope in these kind of technologies and what they may bring as new varieties, because they see that the disease pressure is mounting, the problems with climate change are getting bigger, so the weather phenomena are getting more difficult for them to manage. So I think indeed, if they would be given a choice between a chemical crop protection product and a resistance in a plant variety, they probably go for that. So I think listening to farmers, I would put it like that, listening a bit more to farmers and maybe a little less to alarmist NGOs might be a good recommendation.
Thank you, Garlic. And then I will want to hear the response. Nikita, sorry, you wanted to say something before I...
No, it's okay. I think we covered really well why do we need new plant breeding techniques and what potential does it have. And I agree as a young researcher that we shouldn't go by ideologies and we should go by information and the facts. But the truth is that it is going by ideology for some people. And I think there's a huge group of people that are undecided. Then there are some people who are just against it and will never change their mind. And then there are some people who are just misinformed. And what GeneSprout Initiative tries to do is to talk to these people, because even if we give them facts, even if we give them logic, it's what they're going to eat. And when it comes to eating something, people are a lot more precautious. When it's medicines, it's gene therapy, it's fine. But when it's food, it's a whole different story. So it becomes even more important to listen to them, to listen to their perspective and give them the right information to make an open or a new perspective. And we have seen this in discussions with the general public that when you explain everything, there are still some concerns, but they're so much more open. So there is such a lack of information for some part of the society that we should also really focus on that. And as far as farmers are concerned, of course, they want to have the best seed. Of course, they want to have the best yields. But the problem is that they are also dictated by the consumers. They also want their products to change, to sell in the end. And I think we will come back to it in the organic part. But I think even there, the farmers want good seed, but have pressure from the consumers as well. Yeah, so that was what I wanted to say on this part. Yeah.
No, thanks, Nikita. And we will definitely come to that discussion later with Michele and Garlic on the organic labeling, which I think is interesting. Before that, Bruce, I just wanted to get your sense, since you have, you know, like a foot in two shoes, you know, the US and the EU. How are these new breeding techniques perceived in the US? How do farmers use them? Are they easily adapting to this new technology? Is it still an early stage? Because I know that research and innovation, you know, last year the chemistry Nobel Prize was won on this specific topic, and one was a European and one was an American professors that won. So I just want to know from you, like, if you can give us what's happening on the transatlantic front.
Thanks, Alessandro. The technology is being adopted slowly. Right now, there's only one high oleic acid soybean that's in a closed system. That is that the soybeans can't be sold outside of the contracts for that product. And part of the reason for that is that since there is no agreed on trade or export way of trading these things, that farmers don't want to plant and commercialize something and then have it rejected at in another country. That happened in 2013. There was a shipment of corn that went to China, and China had not yet approved that this is traditional biotech variety. It was 6 weeks away from approval, but they hadn't. And they stopped all corn imports. There was billions of dollars lost. And that has really made the farmers and the grain and oilseed industry very shy about moving forward with these products. That's on the big side. On the little side, that is on the smaller, more local, public research and small and medium enterprise research. That's very nascent. And we hope that that's really going to take off, because that's one of the beauties of this technology is it is relatively inexpensive, and it can be directed at local problems, whether that's drought, okay, whether that's salinity or something like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Michele, I wanted to pick up on something that Paolo and Garlic mentioned earlier. In really easy words, what are the benefits? Like, why would we move to something that is unknown, if you want, or that requires such a big discussion? That's the first part of the question. And then the second part of the question, which is referring to what Nikita was mentioning, you know, awareness raising, and the fact that people have sometimes preconceptual ideas. Is there an ethical question when it comes to NBTs? Are we changing something that shouldn't be changed? Or, as you were mentioning to me earlier, you know, we are looking at the future in a different way?
Yeah, thanks. So in terms of why we should use them, it's an appropriate question. And especially because these technologies are really replacements for traditional breeding technology. So one could ask, well, if you already have something that works, why would you want to use something new? The answer is that, number one, there are many species where traditional breeding is difficult for a variety of reasons, either because they have a long life cycle. We can think about fruit trees, for example, where it takes forever to go through multiple cycles of crossing, or other species where you just cannot perform crosses. If you take citrus species that we use a lot, oranges, lemons, you cannot cross them, because if you cross them, you'll get something completely different. So there is no breeding in those species. And your repertoire of tools for improving those varieties is extremely limited. You have to think that sweet oranges are all one genotype, and there is no breeding allowed except for hoping in spontaneous somatic mutations. In a species like that, genome editing or cisgenesis would allow you to greatly improve those varieties and make them more adapted to current climatic conditions. Another example for Italy is grapevine. There is a huge value in existing varieties. And if you want to give those varieties disease resistance to make viticulture more sustainable, we cannot afford to go through crossing, because otherwise we create new varieties that will no longer be used for making the excellent Italian wines, Brunello, Barolo, Barbaresco, and so on and so forth. So new breeding technologies are the only hope to make our great wines more sustainable.
And Michele, just to follow up on this with you, on the sustainability part, like, you know, Paolo started the conversation by saying the Green Deal. Sustainability is today the most important word that we can hear. The European Commission has its top priority in there. Is there a sustainability component? Is it better to have NBTs?
Well, sustainability is probably an abused word these days, but sustainability has to be both environmental as well as economical. And I think new breeding technologies allow us to reduce the environmental footprint of agriculture without compromising yields. And I think that's a very important compromise to make. As Bruce mentioned, we cannot afford to reduce yields because otherwise that would mean to utilize additional land for agriculture, which we cannot afford to do. And admittedly, if we want to reduce the use of chemical products in agriculture, usually we pay a price in terms of yield. If we can use genetic solutions, and these genetic solutions can be provided by new breeding technologies, then we will be able to have an agriculture which is more sustainable, but will not have a yield loss. I must explain that though there is a lot of basic research that needs to be done before we can fully exploit the potential of new breeding technologies, because we need to know what the genes are that we need to act upon.
Thank you, Michele. Bruce, you wanted to comment on this?
Just to reemphasize what Michele said, is he's absolutely right. This is an aspect, or new breeding technologies is an aspect of sustainability. And it's a part, okay? It's not the whole thing. It's part of the toolbox, as Paolo said at the very beginning. Okay? We have to innovate. We have to enable innovation in many areas. Delivery of pesticides, delivery of fertilizer. We use drip irrigation in California all the time now. 40 years ago, it was a rare thing. Okay? These are things that we have to reduce our footprint, okay, our resource footprint, to be able to survive on this planet. And the new breeding techniques is a part of that. It's not the whole thing, it's part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Garlic, I saw you wanted to respond to this, and then I have a question for Paolo.
No, maybe just to reiterate that point. There is no magic bullet in plant breeding. It's not one technology or one method that has made progress possible. It is a combination of them all. And gene editing, or the different applications of gene, they are tools. They can help us achieve an objective. What counts is the objective. And the objective is what we need to discuss, or what we are currently discussing actually, under Green Deal, farm to fork strategy, etc. Nobody disagrees with reducing pesticides. Nobody disagrees with saving water, etc. But I think what is also fair to say is people agree most with these kind of statements if they are very far away from the agricultural reality, and if their income doesn't depend on those inputs. So if you are a farmer, you may also agree with all of that, but then you will say, give me something in exchange that will allow me to make a living, to farm the land, because that is actually the base of all that sustainability discussion. If in the end sustainability means we abandon farming in Europe and embrace wilderness, well, then probably we haven't met our goal, because we externalize that effect then to other parts of the world. So that cannot be the future. So I think it's very important to understand these techniques as what they are. They're not the savior of the world, but they are something that intelligent human beings would use because it helps them solving problems, and solving them better and with less impact on the environment and on the economy of individuals than before. So it's a pragmatic way of looking at these things.
No, thank you, Garlic, and this is exactly in line with what I wanted to ask to ask Paolo, which I see is already ready to respond to you. So maybe Paolo, you respond to Garlic, and then I follow up with another question.
No, it's absolutely right, Garlic. The question is how, because everybody agree when we want to reduce pesticide, when we want to reduce the chemistry, but the question is how. When Franz Timmermans presented the Green Deal in our committee, and he said, we have to reduce 50% of pesticide. I answered him and I said, why 50%, Franz? 80%, 85%, 90%. The question is how? How is the concrete alternative? Because we have to understand that farmers, they don't like to use chemistry. They have to combat disease. And when they have to combat disease, they need tools. And the tools is, if we don't want to use the chemistry, okay, but we need to have an alternative. New breeding techniques is an alternative. It's not the solution for everything, but it's an alternative. And the example of Michele said about the grape could be very interesting if we explore, Alessandro, with some numbers. We are talking about the most important disease in grapes, which is Peronospora oidium. If we will have plants resistant, genetic resistant by this disease, we reduce tons and tons of chemistry. Only this example should be, open your eyes and understand what we are talking about. But of course, we have, as Nikita said, people who don't want to listen anymore. But we don't have to surprise that. We have no-vax people. We have a problem with vaccination. This is incredible. But people don't want vaccine, So why we are worried about that? This is normal. But I think the large majority of people is science-based and not fundamentalist basis. So we need to do, this kind of discussion, this kind of good information, and let people understand what we are talking about. So I very much enjoyed this discussion. I hope that in the next months, the Parliament, helped by this commission study, can start reflecting the legislation. Because if we have exactly the same technology than the traditional cross, why we have to use different track on the authorization for the new variety? This is the crucial point. So they will push a lot this technology in the new variety system.
No, you're right, Paolo. And on this, just to double down and take also a question from the audience in the chat box. Okay, fair enough. I understand the point. However, I think that we're always happy to talk about innovation. Innovation. When we talk about innovation in general, we think about super fast cars, automated driving cars. We think about smart domotics, smart ways to help our lives. But then when you put it together with food, then people start to take a step back. And we saw it in the past 20 years. One of the biggest and most ferocious conversations in the European Parliament that at least I've seen was on GMOs. And it was incredibly ferocious. There were people that were for and people that were against. And it was, very, very divisive. So the question to all of you is, and we're going to discuss it also next week with a different event, but is innovation a buzzword when it comes to food? Or is it, are we really ready to go for some innovation? I don't know if anyone has a take on this. Nikita, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. We have been thinking about this as well, that what happens when we talk about genome editing in food. And the thing is that when it comes to other fields like medicine, it's a matter of life or death. It's a matter of what can save me, what can help me, and things like that. When it comes to food, I think it's also a matter of urgency. We keep saying climate change is happening, we need these things, we need that thing, but we are in a place of, say, at this moment, not this sense of urgency where we feel we need to adapt these techniques, we need to adapt these technologies right now. And also there was a study done where people feel that something they ingest might poison them. So it's like this psychological thing that what am I eating can poison me, or things like that. The trust that they have on food innovations, and combined with preconceived and misconceptions from the past, GMOs all together are the fear of the unknown. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? Will something happen? Will something bad happen? And therefore, I think that with food, there is always this thing. If something works, why change it? Why do we even want to do that? There are other ways to do it. Let's reduce food wastage. Let's do organic. Why do we need this? And honestly, from our point of view, yes, there are ethical concerns regarding how you use a technique, but it's also unethical to not use something that could make this world very much more sustainable. So yeah, I think with food, it's always going to be a different argument for people. And genome editing in other fields will have less of that problem.
Thank you, Nikita. Now, I just want to, because I don't want to lose the other two sides of the debate that we're going to touch upon. So one is, and I would be interested in understanding from Bruce, the one aspect related also to trade. But first, Garlic, I wanted to ask you, and to Michele as well, when it comes to organic, how do we, what is the state of play? How do we work on NBTs? Because also that is one demand that the European Commission and the European citizens have.
Well, I think it's organic is a particular catch-22 situation, if I may. I think if we look at it really from a scientific point of view, or just looking at figures, we know the world as it is today and as it is going to be in 10 years will not be able to survive on organic production. Point. There is no question it cannot be done, not under the current conditions. New breeding techniques, generally speaking, means, as Michele explained, means that we actually, man-made indeed, mimic something that could occur naturally. So why would a product that is designed, if I quotation mark, by Mother Nature qualify for organic production, and the same product developed with the help of these technologies, mimicked basically by man, would consider to be a GMO, which must never enter the organic food chain? Logically, that makes no sense. And very practically speaking, we know that the biggest challenge for organic farming is productivity. That's the biggest challenge. It's not interest of people consuming organic food, but it is how can they become productive and produce enough to be also producing at prices that can attract the average consumer. These technologies, these two, may help to do that, actually, without chemical pesticides. So normally, if you are an organic farmer, you should say these technologies, they are God sent, no, for my kind of production. And it's artificial to basically exclude them from organic farming due to a process-based legislation, which was devised in the 1990s, when we didn't even know that these kind of technologies would exist. So I think the organic movement needs to make up its mind, what is it that you want to achieve? Do you really want to produce more sustainably with less pesticides, with less fertilizers? Then these tools can help, and then you should embrace them. If it is a marketing act to say we want to be different, well, then maybe you can reject them. But I don't think that's helping the environment.
Thank you, Garlic. Michele?
It's an awkward situation because organic agriculture would probably be the sector of agriculture that could benefit the most from the use of new breeding technologies. I mean, if you want to be very simple and schematic, there are 3 ways to improve things in agriculture. Genetics, by modifying the genetic composition of plants and animals. Agronomy, by new agronomic practices such as digital agriculture. And finally, chemistry. Now, if you want to abandon chemistry and you don't want genetics, you're only left with one solution, which is agronomy. And oftentimes it's difficult to do everything with agronomy, especially when you consider that if you look at the historical data, genetic improvement has been by far the largest contributor to both increases in yield as well as improvements in sustainability. The reality, though, is that the European Association of Organic Farmers has very fixed rules, for example, for organic seed production. They talk about indivisibility of the genome, indivisibility of the cells. And when you face these things, it's more a matter of religion than a matter of science. And it's difficult to contradict those kind of statements. I think we have to do a lot of work to, as Nikita was saying, to persuade the consumers that there is nothing bad in this. I think there is also a responsibility by food companies when they choose their marketing strategies. If I think, for example, of one of the largest Italian food companies, which I won't name, but their whole marketing strategies is based on 2 simple equations. Old equals good, new equals bad, equation number 1. Equation number 2, natural equals good, artificial equals bad. And genetic improvement fits into the bad things. It's new and it's viewed as something artificial. So if that's the way you try to persuade people to buy products, then it will be very difficult for us to convince them that there is a need for use of these technologies. But I think it all comes down to the fact that the consumer doesn't really have a clear perception of the benefits that could come from the use of these technologies. I don't think they are scared by the risks. So their choices are always driven by a risk-benefit analysis. I think it's not the risk side that scares them. It's the fact that they don't see any benefit. So if I don't see any benefit, why should I choose it, even if the risk is minimal?
Thank you, Michele. We have other 15 minutes, so I would like to tackle the very final part of the discussion, and I would like to start with Bruce on this. Bruce, we live in a hyper-connected world where at the tip of our fingers, we are on one side in India, and then on the second later we are in the United States. We see that we are from Italy, from the Netherlands, in Brussels right now. So in a hyper-connected world, of course, when it comes to seeds, when it comes to plant breeding, of course, you know, everything is also interconnected. And so I would like to ask you, on one side from the business and commercial side, and on the other side on the research and innovation. So we have pros and cons, we have challenges and opportunities. How do you see the future when something is so new that has to be legiferated and has to be, you know, build a political framework and a legal framework around it?
Thanks for the question, Alessandro. The opportunities for shared knowledge, for shared research and shared innovation are incredible. And the demand is incredible. Let's take away demand in Europe, in the United States, Canada, Australia. Let's take away that demand. Let's talk about the Sahel, okay? North Africa, getting drier, okay? Incredible poverty. Okay? There's demand for advanced breeding techniques there, and we could work together to provide that technology. Okay? And one of the things that the new U.S. administration is bringing forward is something called the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, where we're trying to build a coalition of countries that are willing to invest in research and development in innovative technologies that address the climate situation. We're building towards the COP26 in November to get countries to sign onto that. So it's an exciting opportunity and something that I hope the European member states and the EU would agree to participate in. On the business side, okay, business. Okay, if you're a farmer, you'll use some biotechnology, some new breeding techniques, and you'll use some traditional techniques. It depends on what your customer wants. Okay. There are many farmers in the United States who are part organic and part traditional because they sell the different value chains. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Okay, the farmers will use the tools, they will adapt them, and the more confidence they have in them, the more they'll use, and they'll point them at different value chains at different customers. That's what I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. Paolo, on this, and this is also a question that came from Alessia, from the audience. The European Parliament now we will see what is going to be the proposal of the Commission, but let's say that in the next 2 years, it's crystal clear that something will have to move. And so the Parliament will have a major role. Should we take into consideration the fact that the world is globalized and so we need to adapt to other regulations around the world? Should we have our own stricter, less strict?
Absolutely, yes. In the interconnected world today, we have a tremendous, wonderful, I would say, wonderful climate for research people. What we have done with the vaccine is an example of what is extremely important, because when we put all the scientists together, working together, know each other, know exactly what the research is doing, we can do something incredible in less than 1 year, we get the vaccine against COVID-19, which need normally 8-9 years. So that's incredibly important to maintain this. I welcome very much what Bruce said about the you know, to create a cooperation between US and Europe on starting on this technology, because we have to clarify, we have to explain, we have to say exactly what Michele said about organic. This is exactly the truth. This technology is the best alias of the organic farming, but we have to explain that. You want to achieve this result? Well, we have technology and other input we can do together if we work together. Because another thing's important to underline of these new breeding techniques is that the size of the research center should be not very big. Even the small center can make a lot of progress using this technology. And this is very important because we need invest, of course, in research, but even we have a lot of a small university and experimental station who can do a lot of innovation in this stage, thanks to the new breeding techniques. So I believe that now is the time to work together, because the world needs food, but the world is less resources because we have a very small amount of water, very small amount of land, and we need to produce. Then we have to produce but maintain high fertility of the soil. So we need technologies, we need innovation, we need to cooperate the scientists and to find a solution to the very big goal in the future. So I hope that the scientific basic approach can help us in European Parliament to explain that. I'm not worried about the small part who are totally against, because anyway, we have to manage some people who are totally against. No problem. But we have to explain the people who want to listen us, to become bigger and bigger. And now it's important because these technologies have the support of all farmer unions, for example. This is important. And the farm unions means all the community and the people. So what we have to do, talk and talk, like what we are doing now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paolo. So now we move to the final comments and final statements. I always take pride on the idea that if we say 1 hour, we stick to 1 hour. So we will not go overboard, not for the people that are listening to us, not for you. So in a minute, each and every one of you, I would like to get a final statement. And I would also be interested, Nikita and Michele, as scientists, what is your demand, you know, to politics? What is the way forward, according to you, to get these things going? And then Garlic, from the point of view of the industry on the other side, like, you know, what is the way forward? And Paolo and Bruce, I would be curious to understand what can politics do to make sure that we raise awareness in this way. Nikita, ladies first.
Yeah, thank you. I think the way forward is, the legislation needs to be adapted to the current needs of the society, to the current technologies that we have. It cannot be based just on the technology. It needs to be product oriented. But at the same time, we also have to be transparent and trustworthy, because we have to stop this cycle of misinformation. We have to stop the cycle of hiding behind our doors. We need to be open about what we're doing. As researchers, we're trying to do that. We should do it more. And so should the industry, so should the politics, and maybe have a better connection with everyone, have a better, like, we felt left out in this whole process. So yeah, next time, maybe we also show an impact assessment or say what we feel and share our views as well. So listening to everyone, but also going and doing the thing that's best for society in the end. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nikita, for being with us and for this pill. Michele?
Yeah, when it comes to politicians, I think, of course, one thing we as a scientific community ask them is to listen to us and pay attention to our opinion. I mean, it's a triangle, and you have science, you have politics, and you have society. And oftentimes, we as scientists feel that politics is driven by societal feelings. While we understand why that is done, we think that when it comes to certain questions, politicians should also pay attention to scientists. It may not give them an advantage in the short term in terms of votes, but it may give them an advantage in the longer term. The other aspect is that if we really want to exploit the potential of new breeding technologies, we need to have a large investment into basic research. We need to perform research to find the genes that control complex traits and find those regions around those genes that control their expression so that we can finally modulate them and obtain the improvements that we need in order to get more productive and more sustainable varieties.
Thank you, Michele. Garlic?
Well, I think probably now is the right time, not only because of the latest breeding methods, but also because of them, to have a real fundamental debate on what kind of agriculture, what kind of farming model, what kind of food production model do we stand for in the European Union. And we need to have that debate openly and constructively, but also based on criteria. And when we discuss now the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork and the biodiversity strategy, I think that is what many people have criticized. There was very little criticism about the ambition, but there was quite fundamental criticism about the lack of impact assessment, of understanding what will that mean in practice. And probably this technology or these technologies, because it's a group of them actually, go in the same direction. It's about understanding why do we use them, how do we use them, what is the effect of using them, and does that in the end then correspond to at least some of the objectives that I have as a citizen, be it environmental, be it in view of food quality. We're talking about gluten-free wheat here, for example, or be it about nutritional value, etc. So the more of these products will come to market, I think the more obvious the advantages will be. The question is, when will we get there? And will the legislation actually allow us to make that offer to society? And therefore, I think, indeed, like mentioned by Nikita, I think we all hope that Europe will adopt a more pragmatic and more suitable approach for these technologies, because they're not the same as the old transgenic technologies of the 1990s. And therefore, they should also be treated differently.
Thank you very much, Garlic von Essen, for your take. Bruce and then Paolo. Last bits.
Thank you, Alessandro. I'm not going to talk about policy. Everyone has covered the policy side of things. They're right. Okay. What I'd like to think about is maybe how do we introduce innovation? And maybe we can think of teamwork. Okay, you can have a marketing person working with a biotechnology specialist, with a food scientist, and they can have, in the United States, in the extension service, there are fields of new varieties that in where farmers farm, and the farmer can stop by and see what the new variety looks like, and know how it would fit into his planting. Okay, and I'd have field testings in cities, okay, where consumers can see what's happening, where they can have a taste of something. Okay, I think we have to think like marketing folks, right? Not just scientists, and have innovation teams to help with the acceptance of these new technologies. Thanks.
Good point.
Thank you, Bruce. I hear a good point, so I guess I share it with Garlic. Paolo, to close off.
Well, as a politician, we have to listen to public opinion. We cannot just forget public opinion. And this was the reason that the mistake we have done with GMO. We give a very terrible picture about GMO. You know, the idea that we are studying something to resist in another pesticide, you know, that was terrible. We don't have to make mistake. We have to, you know, to clarify to the public opinion what we are talking about. Give example, make number, make people understand. Then, of course, there will be some minority to don't be agree. But if we are in the right way and we have the science to help us, I think we can proceed with this approach, and we can have a larger and larger support. So please, thank you, Alessandro. Thank you, all this association, to give us the opportunity to talk. Help us to have an opportunity to explain. Sometimes the science is difficult to explain, but sometimes they have a very, very nice example to give us the way how our society can go ahead. And then I very much think we are in exactly good momentum now, because COVID a little bit with a lot of problems, but it increased the science attention. And now is the time to explain to people that we are in the right track and we want to help. Nobody is working against. We are trying to find a solution to the problems. And the problems are very complicated, and the complication we need the study, need the science, need innovation. And I hope that we can do our best in the next months, in the next years. Thank you very much, Alessandro. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paolo. We are trying to find solutions to the problem. So this is a very nice note to end on. Thank you very much, Nikita, Michele, Bruce, Paolo, and Garlic for being with us. Also, thank you to all I think we reached 130 attendees, which is quite of a good, after a year of COVID and Zoom fatigue, a nice number. So it means that the conversation was really relevant. Thank you also to Euroseed, to ASTA, to the US mission, to the European Parliament, to CropLife, and to GeneSprout for helping us bringing together this great event, which was really, really good. So thanks a lot again. The recording will be available, and I wish you all a fantastic rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.